How to read body language. This WikiHow will show you various ways in which to read body language so that you can understand how someone is feeling. Look for emotional cues, such as crying, anger, or embarrassment. More? Look for physical cues to determine the status of a relationship. Learn how to read eyes and body language for attraction cues. Study a person's eyes, facial expressions, and body language to read specific cues, such as power. Reading emotional cues. Watch for crying. Crying is considered to be caused by an explosion of emotion in most cultures. Oftentimes crying is considered a sign of sadness or grief, but crying can also be an expression of happiness. Crying can also come about through laughter and humor. Thus, when assessing crying, you'll need to look for other signals to determine the appropriate context of the crying. 1. Crying can also be forced or manipulated in order to gain sympathy or to deceive others. This practice is known as crocodile tears, a colloquial expression that draws on the myth that crocodiles cry when catching prey. Look for signs of anger and/or threat. Signs of threat include V-shaped brows, wide eyes, and an open or downturned mouth. 3. Arms tightly crossed over the other is a common sign that the person is angry and is closing himself off to you. Look for signals of anxiety. When people exhibit anxiety, they display increased blinking and facial movements, and their mouth stretches into a thin line. 5. Individuals who are anxious may also fidget and fiddle with their hands, unable to keep them in one spot. 6. Anxiety can also be conveyed when people seemingly unconsciously tap their feet or have jittery legs. Look for expressions of embarrassment. Embarrassment can be signaled by averting the eyes or shifting them away, turning of the head, and controlled or even tense smiles. 8. If someone looks down at the floor a lot, they are probably shy, timid, or embarrassed. People also tend to look down when they are upset, or trying to hide something emotional. People are often thinking and feeling unpleasant emotions when they are in the process of staring at the ground. Notice any manifestations of pride. People show pride by displaying a small smile, tilting their head backward, and putting their hands on their hips. Method 1 Quiz. What is one display of anger or threatening body language? Crying. Glancing at the floor. Arms crossed tightly across his or her chest. Increased blinking and jittery movements. Reading relational cues. Assess proxemics and haptics, or distancing and touching. This is one way to communicate the status of an interpersonal relationship. Physical closeness and touch signal liking, affection, and love. 10. People in close relationships require less personal space than with strangers. 11. It is worth noting that personal space is culturally fluid. Keep in mind that what is considered close in one country is considered far away in another. Read the person's eyes. Studies have found that when people are engaged in an interesting conversation, their eyes remain focused on their partner's face approximately 80% of the time. They don't only focus on the other person's eyes, however, but focus on the eyes for a few minutes, then move down to the nose or lips, then back up to the eyes. They may look down a table every once in a while, but they always return to meeting the other person's eyes. 12. When people look up and to the right during a conversation, it usually means they're bored and have already dismissed the conversation. 13. Dilated pupils mean that the person is interested in what is going on. Keep in mind, however, that many substances can cause the pupils to dilate, including alcohol, cocaine, amphetamines, LSD, and others. 14. Eye contact is also frequently used as an indication of truthfulness. Overly persistent or even aggressive eye contact suggests that a person is very aware of what messages he is trying to send out. A person who tries to deceive someone, thus, may distort his eye contact so that he doesn't appear to be avoiding it, which is a widely recognized indicator of lying. 15. However, keep in mind as noted above, that there is a lot of individual variation when it comes to evaluating eye contact and lying. Look at the person's posture. If someone rests their arms behind their neck or head, the person is conveying that he is open to what is being discussed or may just laid back in general. Tightly crossed limbs are usually a sign of resistance and low receptivity to another person. In general, when the body is arranged in such a manner, this is a sign that a person is mentally, emotionally, and physically closing themselves off from another person. 16. In one study of 2,000 negotiations, which were videotaped to assess the negotiator's body language, there wasn't an agreement in any case where one of the participants had his or her legs crossed. Method 2 quiz. What is a common indicator a person is lying? Close personal contact. When someone in a conversation looks up and to the right. Legs are crossed. Aggressive eye contact. Dilated pupils. Reading attraction cues. Evaluate eye contact. Making eye contact is a sign of attraction, as is blinking more than the average 6-10 times per minute. 18-19. Winking can also be a sign of flirting or attraction. However, keep in mind that this may be culturally specific. Some Asian cultures frown upon winking and consider it rude. Watch for certain facial expressions. Smiling is one of the clearest signs of attraction. Make sure you know how to decipher a forced smile from a real one. You can tell fake smiles from real ones because the smile doesn't reach all the way to their eyes. Genuine smiles usually result in tiny crinkles around a person's eyes, crow's feet. When people fake smile, you won't see the wrinkles. 21-22. Raising the eyebrows has also been observed as a sign of flirting. Consider the person's posture, gestures, and stance. Generally, people who are attracted to each other try to close the distance to one another. This may mean leaning forward towards the other person more but can also be more direct, in the form of touching. A light tap or stroking of the arm can be a signal of attraction. Attraction can also be signaled by the person's feet staying pointed toward or facing the object of his interest. 24. Palms turned up is another sign of romantic interest because it suggests openness. Understanding body language. Know that reading body language is a complex task. Nonverbal behavior is itself complex since all people are different and present themselves differently. 41. Reading body language can be challenging because when interpreting the signs people are sending you, you need to take into account the whole picture. For example, did that person already mention to you today that he had a fight with his wife or didn't get a promotion at work? Or was he visibly anxious over lunch? When interpreting others' body language, it's important wherever possible to take into account their personality, social factors, verbal behavior, and the setting. While this information is not always available, it can be helpful to read body language. People are complex, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that how they convey themselves with their bodies is complex too. You could compare reading body language to watching your favorite TV show. After all, you wouldn't just watch one scene in your favorite TV show, but the whole episode in order to properly understand the meaning of that one scene. You'd also probably keep in mind past episodes, a character's history, and the plot as a whole. You need to look at this bigger picture also when it comes to reading body language. Remember to consider individual differences. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to body language. If you're invested in being able to read a person's body language accurately, you may have to study that person for some time. What is true for one person may not always be true for another. For example, when lying, some people break eye contact, while others attempt to maintain even more eye contact than usual so that they won't be suspected of lying. Be aware that body language can differ according to culture. For some emotions and expressions of body language, the meaning of the messages is culturally specific. For instance, in Finnish culture, when a person makes eye contact, it is a sign of approachability. By contrast, when a person makes eye contact, It is considered to be an expression of anger for the Japanese. 42. To give another example, in Western culture, a person who feels comfortable with you will lean forward toward you and square their face and body directly toward you. 43. People with certain disabilities may have unique body language. For example, autistic people often avoid eye contact while listening, and fidget frequently. Note that while some physical expressions of emotion vary from culture to culture, some research suggests that certain expressions of body language are universal across cultures. This is especially true for the communication of dominance and submission. For example, across different cultures, a lowered posture indicates submission. Note that understanding differs according to nonverbal channel. The nonverbal channel is the means by which a message or sign is conveyed without words. Important nonverbal channels include those of kinesics, eye contact, facial expressions, and body language, haptics, touch, and proxemics, personal space. In other words, the medium determines the message. 45. As a general rule, people are best at reading facial expressions, and then body language, and, finally, personal space and touch. 46. Even within each channel, there can be great variation. For instance, not all facial expressions are equally easy to understand. People are generally better at reading facial expressions that are pleasant rather than unpleasant. One study found that individuals are better at accurately interpreting happiness, contentment, and excitement, compared to anger, sadness, fear, and disgust. Method 5 quiz. What is the main takeaway to understanding body language? There is no variation in body language tells among different cultures. Breaking eye contact always means someone is lying. Body language can differ from individual to individual. People are better at reading unpleasant facial expressions.